"Push her off, I want to hear her scream." That's what Sergeant First Class Derek Holt shouted on the training tower at Fort Jackson, South Carolina, on an October morning in 2024. The girl dangling from the platform was 20 years old, barely 5'4", trembling like a leaf in a hurricane. 4 instructors surrounded her. The recruits below were laughing, recording on their phones. What none of them knew, what would shatter their entire world in the next 3 hours, was that the terrified girl they were about to push had already killed 17 enemy combatants in classified operations across 3 continents. If you're watching from anywhere in the world, drop your location in the comments below. And if you want to see what happens when wolves discover they've been hunting a ghost, subscribe now and stay until the end. The military transport bus rolled through Fort Jackson's main gate at 0547 hours, carrying 43 new recruits for the Military Police Training Battalion. 42 of them were exactly what they appeared to be: nervous, young, uncertain about what awaited them. One was not. Specialist Maya Chen sat in the back row, her oversized uniform hanging loose on her small frame. She'd chosen this seat deliberately. It gave her a clear view of every face, every reaction, every whispered conversation. Her dark eyes, soft and doe-like, scanned the bus with the practiced efficiency of someone cataloging threats. She looked 17. That was the point. The recruit beside her, a thick-necked kid from Alabama named Private First Class Tommy Reeves, glanced at her and smirked. "You sure you're in the right place, little girl? This ain't summer camp." Maya ducked her head, let her voice tremble slightly. I passed basic training. Top of my class in marksmanship, actually." Reeves laughed loud enough for half the bus to hear. "Top of your class? What did they do? Give you a smaller target?" 3 other recruits joined the laughter. Maya memorized each face. The bus lurched to a stop. Through the window, she could see the training complex sprawling across the South Carolina landscape. Somewhere in those buildings, a 19-year-old girl named Amanda Walsh had hanged herself in a supply closet 6 weeks ago. The official report called it mental health crisis exacerbated by training stress. Maya knew better. Naval Criminal Investigative Service knew better. That's why they'd sent her. The youngest female to ever complete SEAL qualification training. The operator her platoon called Ghost, because enemies never saw her coming. Now she was playing the role of her life, the weakest link. The drill instructors were waiting outside the bus, arranged in a perfect line of intimidation. Maya counted 7, all male, all radiating the particular energy of men who'd confused cruelty with leadership. She spotted him immediately. Sergeant First Class Derek Holt, 28 years old. 6'2", built like a heavyweight boxer, with pale blue eyes that held something broken behind them. He stood slightly apart from the others, arms crossed, watching the recruits stumble off the bus with the patience of a predator. Maya let herself be jostled, pushed, nearly knocked over by Reeves as he shoved past her. She stumbled, caught herself, made sure Holt saw the fear in her eyes. He did. His gaze locked onto her like a targeting system acquiring its objective. Good. "Form up," the senior drill instructor, a barrel-chested master sergeant named Williams, bellowed across the morning air. "4 ranks, move it." Chaos erupted as recruits scrambled to organize themselves. Maya deliberately positioned herself at the end of the 3rd row, the most exposed position, the easiest target. Holt began walking the lines. His footsteps were measured, deliberate, each one designed to increase anxiety. When he reached Maya's row, he stopped directly in front of her. "Name?" "Ses, Specialist Maya Chen, Sergeant." "Chen." He let the name hang in the air. "You related to Master Chief Daniel Chen the SEAL, who got himself killed in Syria 3 years back?" The question hit Maya like a physical blow. She hadn't expected them to make the connection so quickly. Her father's death was public record, but not something most Army instructors would know. She forced tears into her eyes. It wasn't hard. Thinking about her father always brought them close to the surface. He was my father, Sergeant. Holt leaned closer. His breath was hot against her face. So Daddy was a big, tough SEAL, and little girl thinks she can ride his coattails into the military. Is that it? No, Sergeant. I just want to serve, Sergeant. You want to serve? Holt's voice dripped contempt. Your daddy served. Your daddy was a warrior. He flicked her shoulder with 2 fingers hard enough to make her stagger. You're a charity case, a diversity quota, a participation trophy in combat boots. Maya kept her head down, shoulders hunched, the picture of submission. Inside, she was cataloging everything. The slight tremor in Holt's voice when he mentioned her father. The way his jaw tightened. The wedding ring tan line on his left hand, recently divorced. The barely visible scar on his right wrist. Horizontal, deliberate. He'd tried to hurt himself once, maybe more than once. That detail wasn't in his file. The first day was designed to break them. Maya had been through. Budas had survived. Hell Week had completed training that broke 90% of the men who attempted it. Fort Jackson's MP training was physically demanding, but nowhere near that level. Still, she played her part. She lagged behind on runs. She struggled with push-ups. She fumbled through basic drills that she could perform blindfolded. Every failure was noted. Every stumble was observed. By noon, word had spread through the training battalion. The little Asian girl with the dead SEAL daddy was the weakest recruit in the cycle. Perfect. During the lunch break, Maya positioned herself at the end of a table alone, picking at her food with the dejected posture of someone who'd already given up. She was actually observing the hierarchy forming among the instructors. Holt sat with 3 others. Staff Sergeant Marcus Webb, a former infantry soldier with anger management issues. Sergeant First Class Dominic Torres, whose disciplinary record showed multiple complaints from female recruits, all dismissed. And Staff Sergeant Jerome Wallace, the youngest of the group, clearly seeking approval from the others. They were laughing, gesturing toward the recruits. Webb pointed directly at Maya and said something that made the others nod. She'd been marked. A tray slammed down across from her. Maya looked up to see a young woman with fierce eyes and a stubborn jaw. The name tape read Torres, but this was Private Jessica Torres, no relation to the instructor. Mind if I sit here? Maya blinked, let confusion show. Sure. Torres dropped into the seat with the exhausted grace of someone who'd been fighting all day. You're Chen, right? The one Sergeant Holt's been targeting. I don't know what you mean. Yeah, you do. Torres leaned forward, voice dropping. He did the same thing to me. First day singled me out, made me feel like garbage. It's what they do here. Maya tilted her head, studying this unexpected ally. Torres glanced around, making sure no one was listening. There's a group of instructors. Holt's the leader, but there are others. They pick targets. Always women. Always the ones who look vulnerable. She paused. There was a girl before. Amanda Walsh. She was my bunkmate for 2 weeks before she what? Torres's eyes went dark. Before she killed herself in a supply closet. Maya let genuine grief enter her voice. This wasn't acting. I'm sorry. That must have been horrible for you. You want to know what's horrible? Torres's hands clenched into fists. The night before she died, I heard her crying. Heard her saying she couldn't take it anymore. I told her it would get better, that she just had to be strong. Her voice cracked. I was wrong. It didn't get better. They didn't stop. And now she's dead, and nobody cares, and I have to look at Sergeant Holt's face every single day knowing. She couldn't finish. Maya reached across the table, touched Torres's hand gently. Knowing what? Knowing he's the reason she's gone. The afternoon brought hand-to-hand combat training. Maya had dreaded this moment since receiving her mission briefing. Fighting was her native language. Holding back would require more discipline than almost anything else she'd done. The recruits gathered on the training mat as Sergeant Webb demonstrated basic defensive techniques. His form was sloppy, his explanations incomplete. Maya's instructors at SEAL qualification training would have failed him in the first 5 minutes. "All right, Chen," Webb pointed at her. "Get up here. You're going to help me demonstrate what happens when a small person tries to fight a big person." Laughter rippled through the crowd. Maya walked to the mat with her head down, shoulders hunched, looking exactly like someone about to be embarrassed. Webb circled her like a shark. The key lesson here is simple. Size matters. Strength matters. When you're facing a bigger opponent, you have 2 choices: run away or get hurt. Watch. He grabbed Maya's wrist without warning, twisting hard enough to cause genuine pain. She let herself cry out, let herself stumble, let herself look helpless. Webb threw her to the mat with contemptuous ease. "See, that's reality. No amount of training makes up for basic physical disadvantage. Remember that when you're out there pretending to be soldiers." He offered his hand to help her up. She took it, letting him pull her to her feet. "Any questions?" Private Reeves raised his hand. "Yeah, what if she tried to fight back? Like actually fight?" Webb grinned. "You want to see that Chen throw a punch at me? Your best shot." Maya hesitated. Her best shot would shatter his orbital bone and probably kill him. She calculated angles adjusted for the audience and threw a clumsy haymaker that missed by 6 inches. Webb caught her arm, spun her around, and slammed her face first into the mat. The impact was controlled enough not to cause injury, but rough enough to humiliate. "That's what fighting back gets you," Webb announced to the laughing crowd. "Pain and embarrassment. Learn your limitations. Class dismissed." Maya stayed on the mat for an extra few seconds, letting them see her struggle to stand. When she finally rose, she caught Holt watching from the doorway. He wasn't laughing. He was studying her with an intensity that made her internal alarms flicker. For just a moment, she wondered if he'd seen something. Some flicker of her real capability. Some hint that her fall had been too controlled, her recovery too smooth. Then he turned and walked away, and Maya reminded herself that people saw what they expected to see. They expected weakness. That's what she would give them, until it was time to show them something else. The first week established the pattern. Maya failed inspections. Maya struggled with PT. Maya cried in the bathroom loudly enough for reports to reach the instructors. Maya became the battalion joke, the cautionary tale, the living proof that standards had been lowered too far. And every night after lights out, she lay in her bunk and reviewed what she'd learned. The hazing ring was worse than NCIS had suspected. At least a dozen instructors were involved with Holt as the clear leader. They targeted female recruits systematically, using a combination of psychological warfare and physical training accidents to break them down. 3 women had washed out of the program in the past year. 1 had filed a harassment complaint that was dismissed. 1 had been hospitalized after a training incident that broke her arm. And 1, Amanda Walsh, had died. Maya had found Amanda's journal hidden in a storage locker. The entries were devastating. Detailed accounts of systematic humiliation, of being singled out for impossible tasks, of being told she was worthless, weak, unfit to serve. The final entry read, "They won't stop. They'll never stop. And nobody will believe me because they're the army, and I'm just a girl who couldn't handle it. I'm sorry, Mom. I tried to be strong like you said, but I'm so tired. I'm so tired of being strong. Maya had photographed every page, transmitted the images to her NCIS handler. But photographs weren't enough. She needed the leaders to expose themselves fully. She needed evidence that would survive a court-martial. She needed them to attack her. The opportunity came on day 10. Holt called Maya into his office after evening PT. The summons was unusual enough to attract attention. Torres caught her eye as she walked toward the administrative building, concern evident in her expression. Maya entered the office and stood at attention, eyes forward, hands trembling slightly. Holt sat behind his desk, reviewing a file. He didn't look up for nearly 2 minutes, letting the silence work on her nerves. Finally, he spoke. "Close the door." Maya obeyed, her heart rate spiking. Not from fear, from anticipation. This was either an opportunity or a threat. Possibly both. Specialist Chen. Holt set down the file. "Do you know why you're here?" "No, Sergeant." "Your performance scores are the lowest in the battalion. Your PT results are pathetic. Your evaluations from every instructor describe you as inadequate, unsuitable, and my personal favorite, a waste of resources." "Do you know what that means?" Maya let her voice shake. "That I need to work harder, Sergeant." Holt stood slowly, walked around the desk until he was standing directly behind her. She could feel his breath on her neck. "It means you don't belong here. It means every minute spent on your training is a minute taken from someone who actually deserves it. It means you're going to wash out just like the others and go home crying to whatever's left of your family about how mean the army was." He leaned closer. "Your father was a warrior. You're an insult to his memory." Maya felt her hands trembling, not from fear, from rage. The effort of suppressing her training was almost physical. Every instinct screamed at her to spin, to strike, to put this man on the ground and make him understand exactly who he was threatening. Instead, she let a tear roll down her cheek. "I'm trying, Sergeant. I'm trying so hard. Please, just give me a chance to—" "A chance?" Holt circled back to face her. "Let me tell you what your chances are. Tomorrow night there's a night navigation exercise. 12 hours in the woods, full gear, no guidance. You're going to volunteer for it even though it's optional. And when you fail, and you will fail, I'll have the documentation I need to recommend your immediate discharge. And if I pass—" Something flickered in Holt's eyes. Surprise, maybe, or curiosity. "You won't pass. But if you did by some miracle, I'd personally apologize to you in front of the entire battalion." He stepped closer, close enough that she could see the broken veins in his eyes. "That's not going to happen. We both know what you are. You're not a soldier. You're not even a person. You're a problem I need to eliminate." Maya swallowed hard, let her shoulders slump in defeat. "Yes, Sergeant." "Get out." She turned to leave, then stopped at the door. "Sergeant Holt. What? Amanda Walsh. Was she a problem too?" The silence that followed was deafening. Maya didn't turn around, but she could feel the temperature in the room drop by 10 degrees. "Who told you that name? Everyone knows her name. Everyone knows she died here." Maya paused. "Everyone knows nobody helped her. Get out." She left without looking back. But as she walked across the darkened compound, she allowed herself a small smile. She'd rattled him. Good. Tomorrow night in those woods, they would come for her. She could feel it like weather pressure, like the electricity before a storm. And when they did, the ghost would finally reveal herself. Private Torres was waiting at the barracks door. "What did he want?" "Are you okay? You were in there for almost 20 minutes." Maya let exhaustion show on her face. It wasn't entirely acting. Maintaining her cover for 10 days had been draining in ways she hadn't anticipated. He wants me to do the night navigation exercise tomorrow. Says it's my last chance to prove I belong here. Torres's face went pale. Maya, no, you can't. Why not? Because that's... Torres grabbed her arm, pulled her away from the other recruits filtering into the barracks. That's what they did to Amanda. Made her volunteer for a night exercise. Told her it was her chance to prove herself. She went in at sunset, and her voice dropped to a whisper. They found her body 2 days later. Maya felt ice form in her stomach. What happened to her? The official report said she got lost, panicked, died of exposure. But that's impossible. Amanda was the best at navigation in our entire class. She could find her way through those woods blindfolded. Torres's eyes filled with tears. They did something to her out there. I don't know what, but they killed her, and they made it look like an accident. And now they're going to do the same thing to you. Maya placed her hands on Torres's shoulders, let the mask slip just slightly. Jessica, look at me. Torres met her eyes, and for just a moment something passed between them. Recognition, maybe. Understanding. I'm going to do the exercise, Maya said quietly. And I'm going to come back. And when I do, everything is going to change. I promise you that. How can you promise that you can barely finish a 2-mile run? Maya smiled. It wasn't the nervous smile she'd been wearing for 10 days. It was something else entirely, something that made Torres step back instinctively. Some promises, Maya said, are worth dying to keep. She walked into the barracks before Torres could respond. Behind her, she heard the other woman's sharp intake of breath, the confused silence of someone who'd just glimpsed something they couldn't explain. 24 hours. In 24 hours, the wolves would learn what happened when they cornered a ghost. And Fort Jackson would never be the same. That night, Maya lay awake in her bunk, reviewing everything she knew. The hazing ring included at least 7 instructors with Holt at the center. Their methods were sophisticated, isolating victims, systematically destroying their confidence, creating situations where accidents could explain injuries or deaths. Amanda Walsh had been their latest victim, but not their first. Maya had found evidence of at least 4 other suspicious incidents over the past 3 years, all involving female recruits, all officially attributed to training accidents or mental health crises. Tomorrow night would be her best chance to gather conclusive evidence. If they attacked her in the woods, if they believed she was helpless and alone, they might finally expose the full extent of their conspiracy. The risks were significant. She would be alone at night in unfamiliar terrain facing multiple hostiles who believed they were dealing with a helpless victim. Her weapons would be limited to whatever she could improvise. But she'd faced worse odds. In Syria, in Somalia, in places that didn't officially exist. She'd been outnumbered, outgunned, and outmatched, and she'd survived. She reached under her pillow, touched the photograph hidden there. Her father, in his SEAL dress uniform, the day he'd received his silver star. His face was serious, but his eyes held the warmth she remembered from childhood mornings when he'd wake her at 04:30 for PT and tell her that strength wasn't about muscles. Strength is about decisions, Maya. The decision to get up when falling is easier. The decision to keep fighting when quitting is safer. The decision to protect others when protecting yourself is smarter. He'd died making that decision, covering the withdrawal of his team when the operation in Syria went bad. They'd found his body surrounded by 17 dead insurgents, his weapon empty, his hands still reaching for another magazine. The tally marks on her arm, 3 of them, represented the lives she'd saved in her short career. 3 operators who'd gone home to their families because she'd made the same decision her father had. Tomorrow, if things went according to plan, she might add more marks. Or she might die making the decision her father had taught her to make. Either way, Amanda Walsh would finally get justice. Maya closed her eyes and let sleep take her. In her dreams, her father stood watch, and the ghosts of Fort Jackson whispered their secrets into the darkness. The morning of the navigation exercise arrived with a tension Maya could taste in the air. She woke at 04:30 out of habit, her body's internal clock still set to her father's training schedule. The barracks was silent, except for the breathing of sleeping recruits, but Maya knew she wasn't the only one awake. Torres was sitting up in her bunk, watching her. "You don't have to do this," Torres whispered. Maya swung her legs over the side of her bunk, began lacing her boots with methodical precision. "Yes, I do." "Why, what are you trying to prove?" Maya paused, looked up at the younger woman. In the pre-dawn darkness, Torres's face was a study in fear and frustration. She'd seen what happened to Amanda Walsh. She didn't want to watch it happen again. "I'm not trying to prove anything," Maya said quietly. "I'm trying to finish something that should have been finished a long time ago." "That doesn't make any sense." "It will. Soon." Torres crossed the narrow space between their bunks, crouching beside Maya with an intensity that surprised her. "Listen to me. I've been watching you for 2 weeks. Something's off. The way you move, the way you react, the way you look at things. You're not what you're pretending to be." Maya's hands stilled on her bootlaces. This was dangerous territory. "I don't know what you mean." "Yes, you do." Torres grabbed her wrist, and Maya had to consciously suppress the reflex to break her grip. "When Webb threw you on the mat, you fell wrong, too controlled, like you knew exactly how to land. When Holt gets in your face, your eyes don't match your body language. Your body says scared, but your eyes say something else entirely." "You're imagining things." "Am I?" Torres leaned closer. "The night you came back from Holt's office, you smiled at me. It wasn't a scared smile. It was the smile of someone who just won something. Who are you really? Maya Chen." The question hung in the darkness between them. Maya calculated angles, options, risks. Torres was observant, dangerously so. But she was also potentially valuable. An ally inside the battalion could be useful when everything went down. "I'm exactly who I said I am," Maya replied carefully. "Master Chief Daniel Chen's daughter, a specialist who wants to serve her country, someone who doesn't like bullies. And someone who made a promise to a dead girl she never met." Torres's breath caught. "Amanda, I found her journal. I know what they did to her. I know how she suffered. And I know that nobody believed her when she tried to ask for help." Maya met Torres's eyes directly, letting some of the mask slip. "I'm going to make sure that never happens again. But I need you to trust me. Can you do that?" Torres was silent for a long moment. Then slowly she nodded. "What do you need me to do?" "Tonight when they come for me, I need you to be ready. There's a sat phone hidden in my footlocker taped to the bottom of the false panel. If I'm not back by 0600 tomorrow, you call the number programmed into it. Tell them Ghost is down. They'll know what to do." "Ghost?" Maya smiled again, and this time she let Torres see exactly what that smile meant. "It's a nickname. I'll explain later. Right now I need you to promise me something. Anything. No matter what happens tonight, no matter what you hear or what they tell you, don't come looking for me. Stay in the barracks. Stay safe. And if things go wrong, get that phone and run. Don't stop for anyone. Can you do that?" Torres looked like she wanted to argue, but something in Maya's voice, some steel that hadn't been there before, made her swallow her objections. "I promise. Good. Maya finished lacing her boots and stood. Now get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be a long day for everyone. The morning PT session was brutal by design. Holt had arranged for Maya to be singled out at every opportunity. Extra push-ups for infractions she didn't commit. Extra laps for mistakes she didn't make. By the time the session ended, she was covered in sweat and red Georgia clay gasping for breath that she didn't actually need. The act was exhausting, in ways that the exercise itself wasn't. Webb approached her as she struggled to her feet, his face twisted with contempt. "You sure you want to do tonight's exercise, Chen? There's still time to quit. Nobody would blame you." "I'm doing it, Sergeant." "Your funeral." He laughed at his own joke. "Literally, maybe. Those woods get cold at night. People have gotten lost before. Bad things happen to people who get lost." "I understand, Sergeant." Webb leaned closer, dropping his voice so only she could hear. "You think you're tough because your daddy was a SEAL. Let me tell you something about SEALs. They break just like everyone else. They bleed just like everyone else. And they die just like everyone else. Your old man proved that in Syria, didn't he?" The rage that surged through Maya was almost impossible to contain. Her hands clenched into fists, muscles tensing for strikes that could kill. But she held it. Barely. "Yes, Sergeant," she whispered. Webb grinned, satisfied. "That's what I thought. Get cleaned up. You've got a long night ahead of you." He walked away, and Maya allowed herself 3 seconds of controlled breathing before the mask slipped back into place. Webb had just made a mistake. He'd revealed that he knew about her father's death in detail. That information wasn't public, which meant someone had been researching her background. They were preparing something specific, something personal. Good. That meant they'd be overconfident. The briefing for the night navigation exercise happened at 1800 hours. Maya stood with the 7 other volunteers, all of them looking nervous except for Private Reeves, who radiated the smug confidence of someone who knew the game was rigged in his favor. Holt delivered the briefing personally. 12 hours, 15 miles, no GPS, no phones, no communication with anyone outside your patrol. You navigate by map and compass alone. Each of you will carry a full combat load and report to checkpoints throughout the night. Miss a checkpoint, you fail. Miss 2 checkpoints, we send search parties. He paused, letting his gaze rest on Maya. "Any questions?" Reeves raised his hand. "What happens if someone gets injured, Sergeant?" "You wait for extraction. Fire 3 shots in the air if you're in serious trouble. But let me be clear, this exercise separates the capable from the pretenders. If you can't handle it, you shouldn't be here." His eyes never left Maya as he said it. "Draw your equipment and move to the starting points. Exercise begins at 1900. Good luck." As Maya collected her gear, Torres appeared beside her, pressing something into her hand. A small compass different from the standard issue. "What's this?" "Amanda's," Torres whispered. "She gave it to me the night before she died. Said it was lucky. It wasn't lucky for her, but maybe..." She trailed off. "Just come back okay." Maya closed her fingers around the compass. "I will. I promise. Don't make promises you can't keep." "I never do." The exercise began at exactly 1900 hours. Maya was assigned the most difficult route, the one that crossed the deepest ravines and the thickest forest. No surprise there. What did surprise her was that Reeves was assigned the same route just 15 minutes behind her. They were boxing her in. She moved through the woods with deliberate slowness, occasionally stumbling, making noise leaving obvious trail markers. Everything a scared, inexperienced recruit would do. Everything a predator would expect. The first checkpoint came at 2100. Maya marked her passage and continued noting the positions of the 2 instructors who'd been watching from the tree line. Webb and Torres, the instructor, not the private. They were tracking her, making sure she stayed en route. At 22:30, she detected the first anomaly. Footsteps behind her that didn't match Reeves's pattern. Multiple sets, moving with the coordination of men who'd trained together. They were making their move. Maya continued walking, adjusting her pace to lead them toward the location she'd selected during her map study. A small clearing near the river, surrounded by thick brush on 3 sides. Perfect for an ambush. Whether she was the ambusher or the ambushed remained to be seen. The attack came at 23:15. 4 figures emerged from the darkness, simultaneously moving with practiced coordination. Webb grabbed her from behind, pinning her arms. The instructor Torres appeared in front of her, his face covered by a black balaclava. Well, lost little lamb all alone in the big dark woods. Maya struggled convincingly, letting them feel her weakness. What are you doing? This is a training exercise. You can't. A hand clamped over her mouth, Holt's voice close to her ear. We can do whatever we want. Who's going to stop us? You? He laughed softly. Your daddy's not here to save you. Nobody is. They dragged her deeper into the woods, away from the designated route, away from any chance of rescue. Maya went limp, conserving energy, cataloging everything. 4 hostiles. Webb on her right arm. The instructor Torres on her left. A 4th man behind her, identity unknown. Holt leading the way. They were heading toward the river, toward a place where a body might float downstream for miles before anyone found it. The clearing they reached was smaller than the one she'd selected, but it served their purposes well enough. They threw her to the ground, and she landed hard, tasting dirt and blood from a split lip. Get up. Maya stayed down, trembling. I said get up. Holt kicked her in the ribs, not hard enough to break anything, but hard enough to hurt. She struggled to her hands and knees, letting tears stream down her face. Please, I don't understand. What did I do? What do you want? Webb crouched beside her, grabbed her hair, forced her to look at him. What we want is for you to disappear, like Amanda Walsh disappeared. Like every other pathetic excuse for a soldier who thought she could play in our sandbox. Amanda, I don't understand. Of course you don't. You don't understand anything. Holt began pacing around her, a wolf circling wounded prey. Let me explain it simply. There are people who belong in the military, and there are people who don't. You don't. Your kind never did. But the Army keeps letting you in because politicians want to look progressive, and we're stuck dealing with the consequences. He kicked dirt in her face. Amanda Walsh cried for 3 weeks straight, couldn't handle the pressure, couldn't handle being told the truth about herself. In the end, she saved everyone the trouble and took care of the problem herself, hung herself in a supply closet like the coward she was. Maya's hands curled into the dirt. The rage was building, threatening to break free. That's not... She wasn't a coward. No, Holt laughed. Then what would you call someone who quits, who gives up, who takes the easy way out instead of facing reality? I'd call her a victim. Maya's voice changed. Something in it made all 4 men freeze. I'd call her someone who was systematically broken by people who were supposed to protect her, someone whose cries for help were ignored because the people who heard them were the same people hurting her. She looked up, and Holt saw something in her eyes that made him take a step back. I'd call her a soldier who deserved better than you. The silence stretched for 3 heartbeats. Then Holt's face twisted with fury. Hold her. I'm going to teach this bitch what happens to people who talk back. Webb and Torres grabbed her arms, lifted her to her knees. The 4th man she could see now, it was Wallace, the youngest instructor, moved behind her, his hands on her shoulders. Holt removed his belt, wrapped it around his fist, drew back his arm, and Maya decided she'd gathered enough evidence. The first strike never landed. She moved with the explosive speed of someone who'd spent a decade training for exactly this moment. Her right elbow drove backward into Wallace's solar plexus, folding him in half. Before he hit the ground, she'd already twisted her left arm free from Torres's grip, spinning to drive her palm into his throat. He went down, choking. Webb tried to maintain his hold on her right arm. She let him keep it for half a second, used his grip as leverage to jump, wrapping her legs around his neck in a flying triangle choke. They went down together, but she landed on top, applying pressure that sent him to sleep in 4 seconds. That left Holt. He was staring at her with an expression she'd seen before on the faces of enemies who'd realized too late what they were dealing with. "What the hell are you?" Maya rose slowly, blood still dripping from her split lip, but her stance now unmistakably that of a trained operator. "I'm the answer to Amanda Walsh's prayer." She began walking toward him. "I'm the consequence you never expected. I'm the reason you're going to spend the rest of your life in prison." Holt reached for his sidearm. Maya closed the distance before he could clear the holster, driving her knee into his wrist, hyperextending his elbow, putting him face first into the dirt with her boot on his neck. "I'm Specialist Maya Chen," she said quietly. "Naval Special Warfare Development Group, the youngest female to complete SEAL qualification training. And you just confessed to conspiracy assault and murder in front of a witness you didn't know was there." She pulled up her sleeve, revealed the tattoo she'd kept hidden for 2 weeks. The dragon wrapped around the trident. 3 tally marks beneath it. "But my friends call me Ghost." The sound of approaching helicopters filled the air. Searchlights swept through the trees. Voices shouted commands. The cavalry had arrived. Private Torres had found the sat phone early, had made the call hours ahead of schedule. As the NCIS agents emerged from the darkness to secure the scene, Maya allowed herself a moment to look at Holt's face. The fear there was absolute. "You can't do this," he whispered. "You don't understand. I was protecting them. I was making them stronger. You were killing them." Maya crouched beside him, let him see the truth in her eyes. And now it's over. The agents took over cuffing the 4 instructors' reading rights documenting injuries. Maya stood apart from the chaos, her right arm throbbing from the exertion, her body finally feeling the exhaustion she'd been hiding for 2 weeks. A familiar figure emerged from the tree line. Private Torres, running toward her, with tears streaming down her face. "You did it. You actually did it. You stopped them." Maya caught her, held her while she sobbed. "It's not over yet," she said quietly. "Tonight was just the beginning." "What do you mean?" Maya looked toward the helicopters, toward the federal agents, toward the future that was about to unfold. Holt wasn't the only one. This goes higher than him, higher than Fort Jackson. Someone's been protecting these men, covering up their crimes for years. We cut off the head, but the body's still out there. Torres pulled back, wiped her eyes. "Then what do we do?" Maya smiled, and for the first time since arriving at Fort Jackson, it was a real smile. Not a mask, not a weapon, just genuine human warmth. "We keep fighting. We find out who's been protecting them, and we make sure Amanda Walsh didn't die for nothing." The helicopters landed. More agents arrived. Somewhere in the chaos, the first reports were already being filed, the first dominoes were already falling. And Maya Chen, the ghost who'd walked among wolves, stood in the center of it all, finally visible. Finally herself. But the night wasn't over yet. The real battle was just beginning. If you or someone you know is having a difficult time, free support is available. Find resources. The helicopters had barely touched down when Maya felt something shift in the air. The federal agents moved with precision, securing Holt and his men, documenting the scene, following protocols she'd seen 100 times. But something was wrong. The response was too fast, too organized, too perfect. She'd made the call to NCIS only 3 hours ago. A full tactical response with helicopters, armed agents, and medical personnel should have taken 6 hours minimum to coordinate. Someone had been ready. Someone had been waiting. Ghost. The voice came from behind her, and Maya turned to face a man in civilian clothes, his posture screaming federal authority, despite the lack of uniform. Special Agent Marcus Cole, NCIS. We need to debrief immediately. How did you get here so fast? Cole's expression flickered, just for a moment. But Maya had been trained to read micro-expressions in hostile interrogations. That flicker meant deception. Your handler expedited the response. Given the sensitivity of the operation, my handler is in Virginia. He couldn't have coordinated a tactical response in South Carolina in 3 hours. Cole's smile didn't reach his eyes. You're tired, Specialist. It's been a long night. Let's get you medical attention and then we can discuss who ordered this operation. That's classified. I have clearance. Not for this. Torres appeared at Maya's side, sensing the tension. Is everything okay? Go back to the barracks, Maya said quietly. Now. But now, Jessica, this isn't over yet. Torres hesitated, but something in Maya's voice made her move. She backed away slowly, then turned and ran toward the waiting transport vehicles. Cole watched her go with an expression Maya didn't like. Your little friend is quite observant. She made the call 4 hours ahead of schedule. Impressive initiative. How do you know when she was supposed to call? Cole's smile widened. Like I said, Ghost. We've been monitoring this operation closely, very closely. Maya's hand moved toward her concealed weapon, but Cole shook his head slightly. I wouldn't do that. Look around. She did. The agents who'd seemed so professional moments ago had shifted their positions. They weren't securing the prisoners anymore. They were surrounding her. What is this? This is what happens when you dig too deep, Specialist Chen. Some secrets are buried for a reason. Some conspiracies are allowed to exist because they serve a purpose. Cole stepped closer, his voice dropping. Holt and his men are useful idiots. They eliminate the weak, the troublesome, the politically inconvenient. They've been doing it for 8 years, and they'll keep doing it long after you're gone. You're protecting them. I'm protecting the system. There's a difference. Cole pulled out a phone, showed her a photograph. Maya's blood ran cold. It was Private Torres walking toward the transport. And behind her, 2 men in NCIS jackets were following at a distance. Your friend knows too much. She's seen too much. If you cooperate, she gets to live. If you don't... Cole shrugged. Training accidents happen all the time at Fort Jackson. Maya's mind raced through options. She was surrounded by at least 12 hostiles, all armed, all trained. Torres was being tracked by additional operatives. The real NCIS agents, if any were present, were likely unaware of Cole's true allegiance. She needed time. She needed information. And she needed to get Torres out of the kill zone. What do you want? Your silence. Your cooperation. Your disappearance. Cole smiled again. The Navy will receive a report that you were killed during the operation. Tragic. Heroic. Your father would be proud, and life will continue as it always has. And if I refuse, then your friend dies tonight, and you die tomorrow, and the only difference is that more people suffer before the inevitable conclusion. Cole's voice hardened. I've done this before, Specialist. I've made operators disappear. Real operators, not 20-year-old girls playing dress-up. That was his mistake. Maya had been calculating distances, angles, wind patterns. She'd been counting weapons, identifying weak points, planning escape routes, and she'd been waiting for Cole to underestimate her. 20-year-old girl. That's what he saw. That's what they all saw. They never learned. She moved. The first agent went down before anyone could react, her elbow driving into his throat with enough force to collapse his windpipe. She grabbed his weapon as he fell, fired twice into the leg of the agent on her left, spun, and put 3 rounds into the ground at Cole's feet. "Nobody move." Cole had drawn his own weapon, but he was frozen, eyes wide with shock. Around them, the remaining agents had their guns trained on Maya, but they hesitated. She had their commander at gunpoint, and she'd already proved she was willing to shoot. "Specialist Chen, you're making a serious mistake." "My only mistake was trusting that someone would actually care about Amanda Walsh." Maya's voice was steady, but her hands trembled with rage. "How many others, Cole? How many women have died because you decided they were inconvenient? You don't understand the bigger picture." "I understand perfectly. I understand that there are men in this world who think they have the right to decide who lives and who dies. I understand that they hide behind flags and uniforms and classified protocols, and I understand that they always underestimate the people they're trying to destroy." She pressed the trigger slightly, and Cole flinched. "Now you're going to tell me who else is involved. Every name, every connection, every victim. And then you're going to pray that I'm feeling merciful." Cole's fear transformed into something else. Calculation. His eyes flicked to something behind Maya, and she knew she had less than a second before the impact came from her blind side. Someone had circled around during the standoff, gotten close enough to strike. Maya twisted as she fell, managing to avoid the worst of the blow, but her weapon went flying. She rolled, came up fighting, but there were too many of them now. 4 agents grabbed her arms. Her legs forced her to the ground. Cole stood over her, straightening his jacket with deliberate calm. "I tried to be reasonable, Ghost. I gave you a chance to walk away. But you SEALs are all the same, too stubborn to know when you're beaten." He nodded to his men. "Take her to the tower. The training tower. High visibility. When her body is found tomorrow, everyone will assume she fell during the navigation exercise. Tragic accident. Case closed." Maya struggled against the hands holding her, but the angles were wrong, the leverage impossible. They were dragging her now toward the same training facility where Amanda Walsh had been broken down piece by piece, where they'd planned to do the same to her from the beginning. The training tower loomed against the night sky, 30 feet of metal and concrete, designed to simulate combat conditions. Maya had trained on similar structures at Coronado, had jumped from greater heights into hostile waters. But she'd never been thrown. They dragged her up the stairs, boots scraping against each step, her arms twisted behind her, at angles that sent fire through her shoulders. At the top, they forced her to her knees at the edge of the platform. Cole followed his footsteps, measured and deliberate. He crouched beside her, close enough that she could smell the coffee on his breath. "Any last words? Something inspiring for the record?" Maya looked up at him, and for the first time that night she smiled. "Yeah. Look behind you." Cole's face twisted with contempt. "The oldest trick in the—" The gunshot came from the tree line, and Cole's right shoulder exploded in a spray of blood. He screamed, staggered backward, and chaos erupted on the platform. Maya moved. Her hands were zip-tied behind her back, but she'd dislocated her own thumb the moment they'd bound her, sliding the restraints just enough to create slack. She pulled free, grabbed the nearest agent by the throat, and used his body as a shield as more shots rang out from the darkness. The agents were panicking now, firing blindly into the trees, taking cover behind equipment that offered no real protection. Maya dropped her human shield, grabbed his weapon, and put 2 rounds into the legs of the agent closest to the stairs. "Federal agents, drop your weapons!" The voice boomed across the training ground, amplified by speakers Maya couldn't see. "This is the real NCIS. You are surrounded!" Cole was trying to crawl toward the stairs, leaving a trail of blood behind him. Maya stepped on his wounded shoulder, pressing down until his scream echoed across the compound. "Who's your superior? Who authorized the cover-up?" I can't," she pressed harder. "Who? General Patterson, Brigadier General William Patterson." Cole's voice cracked with pain. "He runs the whole thing, has for years. Please stop." Maya released the pressure, but kept her weapon trained on his head. Around her, the corrupt agents were surrendering real NCIS personnel emerging from the tree line with weapons drawn. And there, walking calmly through the chaos like she owned it, was Private Jessica Torres. She was carrying a satellite phone, the same phone Maya had hidden in her footlocker. "I made a second call," Torres said, her voice steady despite the trembling in her hands. "After I made the first one. Something felt wrong about how fast they responded, so I called the number again. Got a different person. Told them what was happening. Told them I thought something was wrong." Maya stared at her. "You trusted your instincts. You told me too, the night before you went into the woods. You said some promises were worth dying for." Torres looked at Cole, bleeding on the platform floor, and her expression hardened. "Amanda made me promise to be strong. I think this is what she meant." The real NCIS agents secured the platform, cuffing Cole and his remaining operatives. Medical personnel rushed to treat the wounded, and somewhere in the distance, sirens wailed as military police converged on Fort Jackson. Maya lowered her weapon, finally allowing the exhaustion to show. "It's not over," she said quietly. "Patterson is still out there. He'll know by now that his operation has been compromised." Torres nodded. "Then we go after him." You think I'm letting you do this alone?" Torres's chin lifted defiantly. "Amanda was my friend. These men killed her, and I just watched you take down half a conspiracy single-handed. I want in." Maya studied her for a long moment. She saw herself 5 years ago, desperate to prove she belonged, desperate to make a difference, desperate enough to walk through fire for strangers who would never know her name. "It's dangerous. People have died. More people might die." "I know. You're not trained for this. Not yet." "Then train me." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. Maya thought about her father, about the years of 00430 wake-ups and impossible challenges and lessons that only made sense in hindsight. Strength is about decisions. She made one now. "When this is over, find me at Coronado. There's a program for people like you. People who refuse to quit, even when quitting makes sense." Maya reached under her sleeve, touched the 3 tally marks on her arm. "It's the hardest thing you'll ever do, but if you survive, you'll never have to feel helpless again." Torres's eyes glistened, but she didn't cry, didn't look away, didn't back down. "I'll be there." "I know you will." The next 12 hours were a blur of interrogations, medical examinations, and classified briefings. Maya gave her statement to 7 different agencies, repeated the same facts until her voice was hoarse, and watched as the pieces of the conspiracy fell into place. Brigadier General William Patterson had been running the hazing operation for nearly a decade, using Holt and his men to eliminate female recruits he considered liabilities to military readiness. He'd had protection at the highest levels of Army Command, political connections that shielded him from accountability, and a network of loyal subordinates who believed they were serving a greater purpose. 47 complaints had been filed against training instructors under his command over 8 years. All had been dismissed. 7 women had been hospitalized. 3 had died under circumstances officially ruled accidental. Amanda Walsh had been the 44th complaint. Her journal, recovered from Maya's hidden camera footage, documented systematic abuse that would have ended careers if anyone had listened. No one had listened. Until now. Patterson was arrested at his Virginia home that morning, still in his bathrobe, still believing he was untouchable. The footage of his perp walk would play on every news channel for weeks. The scandal would shake the foundations of military training command. And Maya Chen, the 20-year-old ghost who'd brought it all down, sat alone in an empty briefing room, finally allowing herself to feel the weight of everything she'd survived. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Your father would be proud. SEAL Team 6 Actual. She stared at the message for a long time. Tears finally breaking through the walls she'd built. Daniel Chen had died covering his team's retreat, buying their lives with his own. He'd made the decision to sacrifice himself because he believed some things were worth dying for. Maya had made a different decision. She'd chosen to live, to fight, to expose the corruption that had taken Amanda Walsh and so many others. Both decisions took courage, both required sacrifice, and both in their own way honored the promise she'd made over her father's grave. I'll make it count, Dad. Every breath, every fight, every life I save. She wiped her eyes, squared her shoulders, and stood. There was still work to do. Patterson might be in custody, but his network wasn't fully dismantled. There were still men who believed women didn't belong in uniform. Still systems that protected abusers instead of victims. Still battles to fight. Maya walked out of the briefing room and into the chaos of a command center in crisis. Officers shouted into phones. Analysts pored over documents. The machinery of justice finally awakened ground forward with relentless momentum. Torres was waiting by the door, looking like she hadn't slept in days. They're sending you back to Coronado, she said. I heard the orders come through. They need my debrief at DevGru. The operation has implications for other ongoing investigations. Will you be back? Maya looked at the younger woman, saw the fear beneath the bravery, the uncertainty beneath the determination. She remembered feeling exactly the same way standing at the gates of Bud S., wondering if she had what it took to survive. I told you to find me at Coronado. I know, but Private Torres. Maya's voice softened. Jessica, I don't make promises I can't keep. When you're ready, there will be a place for you. That's not a hope. It's a fact. Torres swallowed hard, then straightened to attention. Yes, ma'am. Don't call me ma'am. I work for a living. Maya smiled slightly. And Torres? What you did tonight, calling that second number, trusting your instincts when everything seemed wrong. That's what separates good soldiers from great ones. Amanda would be proud of you. Torres's composure finally cracked. Tears spilled down her cheeks, but she didn't look away. Didn't break attention. Didn't apologize for showing emotion. That's what strength looks like, Maya thought. Not the absence of fear, not the denial of pain. Just the refusal to let either one win. Thank you, Torres whispered, for everything. Maya nodded once, then walked toward the waiting helicopter. The rotors were already spinning, the crew chief gesturing for her to hurry. She climbed aboard, strapped in, and watched Fort Jackson shrink beneath her as the aircraft lifted into the morning sky. Somewhere down there, the bodies of Amanda Walsh and 3 other victims were finally being treated as what they were, casualties of a war that should never have been fought. And somewhere down there, a young woman named Jessica Torres was taking her first steps toward becoming something extraordinary. Maya touched the 3 tally marks on her arm and made a silent promise. There would be more marks, more lives saved, more battles fought. This was just the beginning. The helicopter touched down at Naval Amphibious Base Coronado at 14:30 hours, and Maya barely had time to step onto the tarmac before a black sedan pulled up beside her. The rear door opened, and a face she recognized emerged. Admiral Catherine Reeves, commander of Naval Special Warfare Command. The first woman to hold the position. The reason Maya had been allowed to attempt BUDES in the first place. "Specialist Chen, get in." Maya climbed into the sedan, still wearing the dirt-stained uniform from Fort Jackson. The door closed, and the vehicle began moving immediately. "You look like hell," Reeves said without preamble. "Respectfully, ma'am, I feel worse." "I imagine you do." Reeves pulled a tablet from her briefcase, scrolled through documents. "Patterson is in federal custody. His lawyer is already screaming about political persecution. The Army is in full damage control mode, and half of Congress is demanding explanations." "Good. Is it?" Reeves looked up, her eyes sharp. "You've started a war specialist. Not just against Patterson and his network, but against an entire culture that's been allowed to fester for decades. There are people in very high places who don't want that culture exposed, who will do anything to protect it." Maya met her gaze without flinching. "Then they can come for me. I'm not hard to find." "That's exactly what I'm worried about." Reeves set down the tablet. "In the past 6 hours, I've received calls from 3 senators, 2 4-star generals, and the Secretary of Defense himself. All of them want to know why a 20-year-old SEAL operator was sent undercover without proper authorization channels. I was authorized by NCIS. You were authorized by a mid-level agent who didn't understand the political implications of what he was approving." Reeves's voice hardened. "That agent is currently being reassigned to a desk in Alaska. His supervisor is facing disciplinary action, and you, Specialist Chen, are being recommended for the Navy Cross." The words didn't register at first. Maya stared at the Admiral, waiting for the other shoe to drop. The Navy Cross. For valor under fire. For saving the life of Private Jessica Torres. For single-handedly exposing a conspiracy that resulted in the deaths of at least 4 service members. Reeves smiled slightly. "Also for giving the Navy the best PR opportunity we've had in years. A young female SEAL takes down a corrupt Army general. The media is going to eat this alive." "I don't care about PR." "I know you don't. That's why I'm telling you this in private, so you understand what's coming." Reeves leaned forward. "You're about to become the most famous enlisted woman in military history, Maya. Every network is going to want interviews. Every politician is going to want photo ops. Every advocacy group is going to want you as their spokesperson." "I'm not a spokesperson. I'm an operator." "Not anymore. Not for a while anyway." Reeves pulled out a folder, handed it to Maya. "Your medical evaluation from Fort Jackson. The nerve damage in your right arm was aggravated during the incident on the tower. The doctors are recommending 6 months of rehabilitation before you can return to operational status." Maya opened the folder, scanned the contents. The clinical language couldn't disguise the reality her arm was damaged, possibly permanently. The same injury that had limited her father's career was now threatening hers. "I can still fight. I know you can. But right now I need you to do something harder than fighting." Reeves reached across, closed the folder. "I need you to testify. Patterson's court-martial begins in 3 weeks. You're the star witness. Without your testimony, his lawyers might be able to claim everything was a misunderstanding, a training exercise gone wrong. They can't seriously believe. They don't have to believe it. They just have to create enough doubt to muddy the waters. Patterson has friends, Chen. Powerful friends who would rather see him walk than admit the system they built is broken." Reeves's voice softened. "I know this isn't what you signed up for. I know you'd rather be in the field doing the work you were trained to do, but right now the most important operation you can run is in a courtroom. Maya looked out the window, watching the familiar buildings of Coronado pass by. She'd arrived here 3 years ago, an 18-year-old with something to prove and a dead father's legacy to honor. She'd failed her first attempt at Buds, returned a year later, and become the youngest woman to complete the program. Now she was being asked to fight a different kind of battle, one where the weapons were words and the enemy wore suits instead of uniforms. "I'll testify," she said finally, "but I want something in return." "Name it." "Private Jessica Torres. She wants to apply for special operations training. I want her application fast-tracked." Reeves raised an eyebrow. "That's not typically how the process works. Neither is sending a 20-year-old undercover to expose a murder conspiracy. Torres saved my life out there, Admiral. She made a call when everything was falling apart, trusted her instincts when a more experienced operator might have frozen. She's earned a chance." The Admiral was silent for a long moment. Then she nodded. "I'll make some calls. No promises, but I'll make the calls. That's all I'm asking." The sedan pulled up to the SEAL compound, and Maya stepped out into the California sunlight. Behind her, Reeves called out one more time. "Chen, your father would be proud. You know that, right?" Maya paused, didn't turn around. "I know. That's why I'm still standing." The next 3 weeks were a blur of preparation, rehabilitation, and legal briefings. Maya spent her mornings in physical therapy working to restore function to her damaged arm. The exercises were tedious, painful, and frustratingly slow. She'd spent years training her body to perform at superhuman levels, and now she was struggling to grip a stress ball. Her afternoons were consumed by meetings with military prosecutors, reviewing evidence, rehearsing testimony. The case against Patterson was strong but complicated. His defense team was arguing that he'd been following unofficial but widely accepted policies, that the hazing was designed to strengthen recruits, that the deaths were tragic accidents rather than systematic murders. It was lies, all of it. But lies told confidently enough, with enough legal sophistication, could create doubt. And doubt was all the defense needed. The first break came on day 8. Maya was in the middle of a physical therapy session when her phone buzzed. A text from Torres. "Holt is talking. Wants to make a deal." She excused herself, found a private corner, and called Torres back immediately. "What kind of deal?" "Full cooperation. Names, dates, documents. Everything he knows about Patterson's network in exchange for a reduced sentence." Torres's voice was tense. "The prosecutors are considering it. They can't let him walk. He killed Amanda. He didn't kill her. Not directly. He broke her down, but she took her own life. Legally, that's a different thing." Torres paused. "I know it's wrong. I know he deserves to rot. But if his testimony helps put Patterson away forever..." Maya closed her eyes, felt the rage building in her chest. The same rage she'd felt in that clearing, standing over the men who'd tried to kill her. The same rage that had driven her through Budas, through every impossible challenge, through the fire that had taken David Brooks and left her scarred. Rage was useful, but rage without control was destruction. What does he know? According to his lawyer, everything. Patterson's connections to the Pentagon, the cover-ups, the other bases where similar programs are running. Torres's voice dropped. "Maya, there are at least 6 other installations where this is happening. 6. And Patterson is just the tip of the iceberg." The implications hit Maya like a physical blow. She'd thought Fort Jackson was an isolated incident, a pocket of corruption in an otherwise functional system. But if Holt was telling the truth, we need his testimony. "I know, but it feels wrong. After everything he did, Justice isn't about feelings, Torres. It's about outcomes. Maya forced her voice to steady. If Holt's testimony helps us take down a network that's been killing women for a decade, then we make the deal. Amanda wouldn't want us to sacrifice the mission for revenge. Torres was quiet for a long moment. How do you do it? Stay so calm when everything inside you wants to scream, "I'm not calm, I'm focused." There's a difference. Maya paused. And I've had practice, more than I ever wanted. Holt's deposition began on day 12. Maya wasn't allowed in the room, but she watched through a video feed, her hands clenched into fists, as the man who'd tried to kill her spoke calmly about 8 years of systematic abuse. He named names. 14 instructors across 6 bases. 3 generals. A senator's chief of staff. A network of officers and politicians who'd built their careers on the bodies of women they considered expendable. Patterson was the architect, but he wasn't the foundation. The foundation was something older, deeper, more insidious. A belief that women didn't belong in combat roles, that allowing them to serve was a political compromise that weakened military readiness. Holt explained it with the detachment of someone describing a business operation. "We didn't hate them," he said at one point. "We just believed they were in the wrong place, that removing them one way or another was better for everyone in the long run." The prosecutor asked about Amanda Walsh. Holt's composure cracked, just slightly but enough for Maya to see the fracture beneath the surface. She wasn't supposed to die. None of them were supposed to die. The goal was to make them quit, not to kill them. His voice thickened. But once they started breaking, they didn't stop. Amanda, she kept trying, kept pushing. We pushed back harder and she hanged herself in a supply closet, the prosecutor finished. "Yes." "And what did you do when you found out?" "I reported it as a mental health crisis, filled out the paperwork, moved on to the next recruit." Holt's hands were shaking now. "That's what the system demanded. That's what Patterson expected. You break them, you document the breakdown, you protect the mission. The mission always came first. And the mission was eliminating female soldiers from combat training. The mission was preserving standards, maintaining the warrior culture that made this military great." Holt looked directly at the camera, and Maya felt his gaze like a physical weight. "You think I'm a monster? Maybe I am. But I believed I was doing the right thing. Patterson made us believe. He made it sound noble, necessary. He made us feel like heroes for destroying people. Do you still believe that?" The question hung in the air. Holt was silent for a long time. "I believed it until a 20-year-old girl beat me in hand-to-hand combat and made me realize everything I'd been told was a lie." His voice broke. "She was better than me. Stronger, faster, more committed. And I'd spent 3 weeks trying to destroy her because I couldn't accept that she belonged." "For the record, you're referring to Specialist Maya Chen." "Yes, the one they call Ghost." Holt's laugh was bitter hollow. "She walked into my training facility like a lamb and she walked out like a lion. And everything I believed about women in combat burned to ashes in the process." The deposition lasted 6 more hours. By the end, Holt had provided enough evidence to implicate 37 individuals across the military and political establishment. The scandal would take years to fully unravel. But the most important target was still Patterson. And Patterson wasn't going down without a fight. The morning of the court-martial, Maya woke to news that her apartment had been broken into. Nothing was taken. But her father's seal pin, the one she kept in a locked box on her nightstand, had been moved to the center of her pillow. A message. A threat. She called Admiral Reeves immediately. "They're trying to intimidate you, to make you afraid to testify." "It's not working, I know. but we're moving you to base housing until this is over. No arguments." Maya agreed, but only because arguing would waste time she didn't have. The break-in was amateur work, psychological warfare designed to rattle her. It showed that Patterson's allies were desperate, which meant they were scared. Scared people made mistakes. The court-martial convened at 0900 at Joint Base Andrews. Maya arrived in dress uniform, her right arm still in a brace, her face carefully composed. The gallery was packed with reporters, military officials, and families of the victims. She spotted Amanda Walsh's mother in the front row, a small woman with gray hair and tired eyes wearing a photograph of her daughter on a chain around her neck. Their eyes met, and Mrs. Walsh nodded once, slowly. That nod carried more weight than any medal, more significance than any commendation. "I'm here for her," Maya thought. "For all of them." Patterson sat at the defense table, ramrod straight in his dress uniform, rows of ribbons covering his chest. He looked like a hero. He looked like everything a general was supposed to be. The trial began with opening statements. The prosecution painted a picture of systematic abuse, institutional failure, and criminal negligence. The defense argued that Patterson was a decorated leader being sacrificed on the altar of political correctness, that the deaths were tragic but unforeseeable consequences of rigorous training. Then Maya was called to the stand. She walked forward with careful precision, aware of every eye in the room tracking her movement. She placed her hand on the Bible, swore to tell the truth, and sat down facing the man who'd ordered her death. Patterson didn't look at her. Not at first. He kept his eyes fixed on some point above the gallery, projecting the calm confidence of a man who believed he was untouchable. The prosecutor led Maya through her testimony step by step. The undercover operation, the harassment, the attack in the woods, the confession she'd extracted from Holt before the real NCIS arrived. When she described the moment on the tower, the moment when Cole's men had prepared to throw her to her death, Patterson's composure flickered. Just for an instant. But Maya saw it. He was afraid. Good. The defense cross-examination was brutal. Patterson's lawyer, a silver-haired man named Morrison, who'd defended war criminals before, attacked Maya's credibility from every angle. "Specialist Chen, you were sent undercover to investigate allegations of misconduct. Is that correct?" "Yes." "And during this investigation, you deliberately deceived the instructors about your background and capabilities." "I was performing my assigned role." "You lied, repeatedly, for weeks." Morrison stepped closer. "And now you expect this court to believe that everything you're telling them is the truth. I expect this court to examine the evidence, including video footage, recorded confessions, and corroborating testimony from multiple witnesses. Video footage obtained through deception, confessions extracted under duress, testimony from co-conspirators seeking reduced sentences." Morrison turned to the panel. "The prosecution's entire case rests on the word of a young woman who has demonstrated a willingness to lie whenever it serves her purposes." Maya's hands tightened on the arms of her chair, but her voice remained steady. "I lied to protect my cover and save lives. General Patterson lied to destroy careers and cover up murders. There's a difference. You claim he ordered your death. Do you have any direct evidence of this order?" "I have the testimony of Special Agent Marcus Cole, who stated explicitly that General Patterson, Agent Cole, was operating outside his authority and has since recanted significant portions of his statement." Morrison's smile was predatory. In fact, Agent Cole now claims that he was acting on his own initiative without any direction from General Patterson. The words hit Maya like a physical blow. She looked at the prosecutor, saw the same shock reflected in his face. Cole had flipped. Somehow in the 3 weeks since his arrest, Patterson's people had gotten to him, had convinced him to change his story, had eliminated the direct link between the general and the attempted murder. Morrison pressed his advantage. So, to summarize Specialist Chen, you have no direct evidence that General Patterson ordered any violence against you or anyone else. What you have is circumstantial evidence, coerced testimony, and your own word. The word of a proven liar. I'm not lying. That's what liars always say. Morrison turned away. No further questions. The prosecutor called for a recess, and Maya walked out of the courtroom with her head held high, even as her mind raced through the implications. Without Cole's testimony, the case against Patterson was weakened. Not destroyed, but damaged. Holt's cooperation helped, but Holt was a subordinate. He could testify to following orders, but he couldn't prove where those orders originated. Patterson might actually walk. Torres was waiting in the hallway, her face pale. I heard. Cole changed his story. They got to him somehow. Maya's voice was flat, controlled. Threatened his family, offered him money, I don't know. But he's protecting Patterson now. So what do we do? Maya didn't answer immediately. She was thinking about everything she'd learned over the past month. Every piece of evidence, every conversation, every moment of the operation. And then she remembered something. His sister. What? Holt's sister. Sarah. She was a victim, too. Tried to kill herself after being hazed out of a training program. Maya's eyes sharpened. But she survived. And she might know things her brother didn't tell her. Torres frowned. How would that help? Patterson's network has been operating for at least a decade. That means there are survivors, women who were broken but didn't die. Women who might have evidence, might have stories that corroborate the pattern. Maya grabbed Torres's arm. We need to find them. Every survivor we can locate. Every story we can document. The trial's been going on for 3 days. How much time do we have? The prosecution rests tomorrow. After that, the defense presents, and then it goes to the panel for deliberation. Maya's jaw set. We have less than 48 hours to build a case that Patterson's lawyers can't tear apart. Torres's eyes widened. That's impossible. So was completing buds at 19. So was surviving what happened at Fort Jackson. Maya started walking toward the exit. Impossible is just a word people use when they haven't committed enough. She pulled out her phone, began making calls. Admiral Reeves, NCIS, every contact she had in the special operations community. The hunt for survivors was about to begin. And somewhere in a holding cell, Derek Holt sat with his head in his hands, knowing that the sister he'd failed to protect might be the key to bringing down the man who'd corrupted them both. The first survivor they found was living in a trailer park outside of El Paso, Texas. Her name was Sergeant First Class Rebecca Martinez, medically retired after a training accident at Fort Sill in 2019, shattered her right knee. The official report said she'd fallen during a night exercise. The unofficial truth, buried in medical records and whispered rumors, was that 3 instructors had held her down, while a 4th swung a metal bar. Martinez didn't want to talk at first. She stood in the doorway of her trailer, a woman who'd once run marathons, now leaning on a cane, her eyes filled with the particular emptiness of someone who'd stopped believing in justice. I told my story 5 years ago, she said. Nobody listened. Nobody cared. Why should I trust you now? Maya understood that emptiness. She'd felt it herself in the months after her father's death, when the Navy had classified everything and told her to move on. She'd learned that trust couldn't be demanded. It had to be earned. Because I'm not asking you to trust the system, Maya said quietly. I'm asking you to trust me. One soldier to another. One survivor to another. Martinez studied her for a long moment, seeing something in Maya's face that the words couldn't convey. The scars. The exhaustion. The absolute refusal to give up. You're the one from Fort Jackson, the SEAL who took down Holt. Yes. I heard you almost died on that tower. Almost doesn't count. Something shifted in Martinez's expression. Not trust, not yet. But something close to it. Something that had been dormant for 5 years, slowly waking up. Come inside. I'll tell you what happened. All of it. The next 36 hours were a marathon of phone calls, interviews, and desperate coordination. Torres worked the phones from a hotel room in Virginia, tracking down leads while Maya conducted interviews across 3 states. Admiral Reeves pulled strings to get them military transport cutting travel times that would have been impossible otherwise. They found 11 survivors. 11 women who'd been broken by Patterson's network scattered across the country, each carrying wounds that had never fully healed. Some had documentation, medical records with suspicious inconsistencies, photographs of injuries that didn't match official explanations, personal journals that detailed systematic abuse. Others had only their testimony, their memories, their pain. But together their stories painted a picture that was impossible to ignore. A pattern of behavior spanning a decade, a network of abusers protected by institutional indifference, a conspiracy so vast that exposing it would shake the foundations of military training command. Sarah Holt was the last interview. She lived in a small apartment in Charleston, South Carolina, working as a physical therapist at a veterans hospital. When Maya arrived, Sarah was waiting at the door, her face pale but determined. My brother called me, she said. Told me you might come. Told me I should talk to you. And what did you tell him? Sarah's laugh was bitter. I told him he was 8 years too late to start caring about what happened to me. They sat together in Sarah's kitchen, 2 women separated by experience, but united by pain. Maya listened as Sarah described her time at Fort Benning, the same facility where Derek would later become an instructor. The hazing, the isolation. The night, 3 men cornered her in a supply room and left her bleeding on the floor. I tried to report it, Sarah said. Went to my commanding officer. He looked at me like I was making it up. Said soldiers don't cry about rough training. Said if I couldn't handle the pressure, I should find another career. What did you do? I tried to kill myself. The words came out flat, emotionless. Pills. My roommate found me in time. They put me in a psych hold, then processed me out with a medical discharge. Depression and anxiety, they called it. Nothing about what really happened. Maya reached across the table, touched Sarah's hand. Your brother didn't know. He knew something happened, but by the time he went through basic training, I was already out, already broken. Sarah's voice cracked. He tried to check on me sometimes, called on holidays, but I couldn't talk to him without remembering, and remembering hurt too much. So I stopped answering. And then he became one of them. Sarah nodded slowly. Patterson recruited him personally, told him he had potential, made him feel special, important part of something bigger. Her eyes filled with tears. Derek didn't become a monster overnight. They shaped him, trained him, made him believe that breaking women was protecting them somehow. Do you hate him? The question hung in the air. Sarah was silent for a long moment, her fingers tracing patterns on the worn tabletop. I hate what he became. I hate what they made him do. But he's still my little brother. Still the kid who used to chase fireflies with me in the backyard. She looked up at Maya's eyes. He called me last night. First real conversation we've had in 6 years. He was crying. Said he finally understood what I went through. Said he was sorry. Said he wished he could take it all back. Sorry doesn't bring Amanda Walsh back. No, it doesn't. Sarah straightened, and something hardened in her expression. But maybe helping you put Patterson away will matter. Maybe that's the only kind of redemption he can earn. Will you testify? Sarah stood, walked to a cabinet, and pulled out a thick folder. She set it on the table in front of Maya. After they discharged me, I became obsessed. Couldn't sleep, couldn't function. All I could do was research. I found other women, other victims, collected their stories, documented everything I could. She pushed the folder toward Maya. This is 10 years of evidence. Every complaint that was dismissed, every career that was destroyed, every woman who was broken by Patterson's network and told she was the problem. Maya opened the folder, scanned the contents. Her breath caught in her throat. It was everything. Names, dates, locations, medical records. A paper trail that connected Patterson directly to dozens of incidents across multiple installations. Why didn't you come forward with this before? Because I was alone. Because nobody would have believed me. Because Patterson has friends in Congress, in the Pentagon, everywhere that matters. Sarah's voice strengthened. But now there's you. Now there are 11 other women willing to stand up. Now there's finally a chance that someone will listen. Maya closed the folder, looked up at Sarah with something that felt like hope. Will you come with me to the trial? I thought you'd never ask. The courtroom fell silent as Maya walked to the witness stand for the second time. Behind her in the gallery sat 11 women who'd never met before this week. 11 survivors who'd traveled from across the country to be present for this moment. 11 voices that Patterson had tried to silence, now united in their determination to be heard. The prosecutor had been skeptical at first. Introducing new witnesses at this stage of the trial was procedurally complicated. But the evidence Sarah had provided changed everything. It created a paper trail that directly contradicted Patterson's defense narrative. And it proved that the conspiracy wasn't limited to Fort Jackson. It was everywhere. Specialist Chen, the prosecutor began. In the time since your initial testimony, have you discovered additional information relevant to this case? Yes, sir. Working with Private Torres and other members of my team, I've identified 11 additional survivors of the training abuse network overseen by General Patterson. Their testimony and documentation corroborate the pattern of behavior I described in my initial statement. Patterson's lawyer shot to his feet. Objection! This is highly irregular. The prosecution can't introduce new witnesses at this stage. Your Honor, the prosecutor interrupted. The witnesses aren't testifying today. I'm merely establishing for the record that additional corroborating evidence exists and requesting that the court consider reopening the evidentiary phase to examine this material. The military judge, a stern-faced colonel named Harrison, leaned forward. This is a serious request. The defense has a right to examine any new evidence. We agree, Your Honor. We're asking for a 48-hour continuance to allow both sides to review the documentation and prepare accordingly. Harrison looked at Patterson's lawyer, then at the gallery full of women who'd come forward. His expression was unreadable, but something shifted in his eyes. Continuance granted. Court will reconvene in 48 hours. The gavel fell, and Maya allowed herself to breathe. Patterson was escorted from the courtroom, but not before he turned to look at her. His face was composed, controlled, but his eyes burned with hatred. You haven't won yet, that look said. This isn't over. Maya met his gaze without flinching. You're right, she thought. It's not over, but it will be. The next 48 hours were a whirlwind of depositions and document review. Each of the 11 survivors gave sworn testimony. Each told her story in detail that couldn't be fabricated, couldn't be dismissed as exaggeration or misunderstanding. Martinez described the night 3 men shattered her knee and told her she'd tripped during an exercise. Washington explained how she'd been denied medical treatment for injuries sustained during combat training that was actually systematic assault. Sarah Holt provided documentation linking Patterson directly to the dismissal of her complaint and the subsequent cover-up. By the end of the second day, the defense had abandoned its strategy of denial. Patterson's lawyers were now arguing for mitigation, trying to minimize their client's culpability by claiming he'd been following policies established by his predecessors. It was a desperate move, and it confirmed what Maya had suspected all along. Patterson knew he was going to lose. When court reconvened, the atmosphere had changed. The gallery was packed. Media from every major network had descended on Joint Base Andrews. The story had gone national, then international. A young female SEAL exposing a decade-long conspiracy to drive women out of the military. 11 survivors standing together to demand justice. A decorated general facing the consequences of his crimes. It was the story of the decade, and everyone wanted to see how it ended. The prosecution called Sarah Holt as its final witness. She walked to the stand with the uneven gait of someone whose body had never fully healed from trauma. But her voice was steady as she was sworn in, and her eyes never left Patterson's face. Ms. Holt, please describe your relationship to Sergeant First Class Derek Holt, currently in custody awaiting sentencing. He's my younger brother. And you were a member of the military before him. I was. I enlisted in 2016, hoping to follow in my father's footsteps. He was career Army, served 30 years before retiring. Sarah's voice thickened. I wanted to make him proud. What happened to your military career? It ended after I was assaulted by 3 instructors during training at Fort Benning. I tried to report the assault. My commanding officer dismissed my complaint. I attempted suicide. I was medically discharged with a diagnosis of depression and anxiety. The assault was never investigated. Patterson's lawyer rose. Objection, Your Honor. This witness's allegations are unrelated to the charges against General Patterson. On the contrary, Your Honor. The prosecutor held up a document. This is a memo from General Patterson, then Colonel Patterson, dated March 15, 2017. It instructs commanding officers at Fort Benning to dismiss any complaints from female recruits regarding training intensity without investigation. Ms. Holt's complaint was dismissed 4 days after this memo was circulated. The courtroom erupted. Harrison banged his gavel, calling for order. Patterson's face had gone pale. His lawyer was whispering urgently in his ear, but the general wasn't listening. He was staring at the memo at the signature at the bottom. His signature. The prosecution enters this document as Exhibit 47. The prosecutor continued. Along with similar memos issued to 12 other installations over the following 8 years. General Patterson's own words ordering subordinates to dismiss complaints, bury evidence, and protect instructors accused of abuse. Sarah leaned forward, her voice cutting through the chaos. I spent 10 years thinking I was alone, thinking nobody would believe me, thinking the system was too powerful to fight. She looked directly at Patterson. But I wasn't alone. There were hundreds of us, thousands maybe, and now finally someone is listening. Patterson's lawyer tried to object again, but Harrison waved him silent. The witness may continue. Sarah turned to face the panel of military judges. My brother became part of the system that destroyed me. He didn't know what happened to me, but Patterson did. Patterson recruited him specifically because he was my brother. Because having a reformed family member would help legitimize the program. Her voice cracked. He used my pain to build his network, used my silence to protect his crimes. And now finally he's going to answer for it. She reached into her pocket, pulled out a worn photograph. This is Private Amanda Walsh. I never met her, but she reminds me of myself 15 years ago, young, hopeful, wanting to serve her country. Tears streamed down Sarah's face. She's dead because people like General Patterson believe that women don't belong in uniform. She's dead because the system that was supposed to protect her was designed to destroy her. Sarah held up the photograph so everyone in the courtroom could see Amanda's face. Young, smiling, full of promise. I'm testifying today for Amanda, for the 11 women in this gallery, for every woman who was broken by this network and told she was the problem. Sarah looked directly at Patterson. We're not the problem. We never were. You are. The silence that followed was absolute. Then from the gallery someone began to clap. Martinez, her cane tapping against the floor as she rose to her feet. Washington joined her. Then the other survivors. Then members of the public who'd come to witness history. Harrison let the applause continue for 10 seconds before calling for order. But even as the room quieted, the energy had shifted. Something had broken loose. Something that couldn't be put back. The prosecution rested its case. Patterson's defense lasted less than an hour. His lawyers presented character witnesses' service records commendations. They tried to paint a picture of a dedicated officer who'd made difficult decisions in service of military readiness. But every time they spoke, 11 women sat in the gallery, their presence a silent refutation of every excuse. The panel deliberated for 6 hours. Maya waited in a small room adjacent to the courtroom, Torres beside her. Neither of them spoke. There was nothing left to say. Everything they'd fought for, everything they'd sacrificed, came down to the decision being made behind closed doors. At 1847 hours, word came that the panel had reached a verdict. Maya walked into the courtroom for the last time. She took her seat in the front row next to Sarah Holt. Torres sat on her other side. Behind them, the 11 survivors waited in unified silence. Patterson was escorted in his face, drawn his posture no longer the confident stance of a general, but the slumped shoulders of a man who knew his time was up. Harrison entered, and everyone rose. Be seated. The colonel shuffled papers, his expression giving nothing away. The panel has reached a verdict on all charges. General Patterson, please rise. Patterson stood his lawyer beside him. On the charge of conspiracy to commit assault, the panel finds the defendant guilty. A murmur swept through the gallery. On the charge of obstruction of justice, guilty. The murmur grew louder. On the charge of conduct unbecoming an officer, guilty. Patterson's legs seemed to buckle. His lawyer grabbed his arm, steadied him. On the charge of dereliction of duty resulting in death, guilty. The gallery erupted. Harrison banged his gavel, but the noise continued. Survivors were embracing. Reporters were rushing for the exits, and Maya Chen sat perfectly still, tears streaming down her face. Guilty. 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 Amanda Walsh's mother was sobbing in the row behind her. Torres had both hands pressed to her mouth, shoulders shaking. Sarah Holt was staring at her brother's commanding officer with an expression of absolute devastating relief. It was over. The sentencing came 2 weeks later. Patterson received 30 years confinement, dishonorable discharge, and forfeiture of all pay and benefits, the maximum sentence allowed under military law. Holt received 15 years reduced from 25 in exchange for his cooperation, Webb Torres, the instructor, and Wallace received sentences ranging from 10 to 20 years. Special Agent Cole, who'd tried to cover up the conspiracy, received 12 years for obstruction and conspiracy. The network Patterson had built was dismantled piece by piece. 14 instructors across 6 bases were court-martialed. 3 generals were forced into retirement. The senator's chief of staff resigned in disgrace, and Private Jessica Torres was accepted into the Special Warfare Combatant Craft Crewman program, the first step on a path that might one day lead to SEAL qualification. Maya was there when Torres received her orders. "You did it," Maya said, genuine pride in her voice. "You're on your way." "I haven't done anything yet. Training starts next month. I might wash out in the first week." "You won't." "How do you know?" Maya smiled, the first real smile she'd allowed herself in weeks. "Because you don't know how to quit. You proved that at Fort Jackson. When everything was falling apart, you made the call that saved my life. That's not luck. That's character." Torres looked down at her orders, then back at Maya. "I have something for you." She reached into her pocket, pulled out a worn compass. Amanda Walsh's compass, the one she'd given Maya the night before the navigation exercise. "I've been carrying it since Fort Jackson. Felt like it brought me luck." Torres pressed it into Maya's palm. "But I think it belongs with you now. You're the one who finished what Amanda started." Maya closed her fingers around the compass, felt the weight of everything it represented. A young woman who'd been destroyed. A system that had protected her destroyers. And a chain of events that had finally led to justice. "I'll keep it safe. I know you will." They embraced 2 women who'd walked through fire together and come out the other side. When they separated, Torres's eyes were glistening. "Will I see you at Coronado?" "Count on it. I'm being assigned as an instructor for the next qualification class." Maya touched the 3 tally marks on her arm. "Time to train the next generation." "Then I'll see you there, Ghost." "See you there, Torres." The memorial service for Amanda Walsh took place on a cool autumn afternoon in Virginia. Maya stood with the 11 survivors watching as Amanda's mother laid flowers on her daughter's grave. The headstone was simple white marble with gold letters. Private. First class. Amanda Walsh, beloved daughter. She served with honor. But someone had added something at the base. A small plaque, unofficial but unmistakable. Her voice was finally heard. Mrs. Walsh approached Maya after the service, her eyes red but her voice steady. "Thank you for everything you did, for not giving up when everyone else had. I wish I could have done more. I wish I could have been there sooner. You were there when it mattered." Mrs. Walsh pressed something into Maya's hand, a photograph of Amanda in uniform smiling at the camera with all the hope and determination of someone who believed the world could be better. "She would have liked you," Mrs. Walsh said. "She would have wanted to be like you." Maya looked at the photograph, felt the weight of responsibility settling onto her shoulders. Amanda Walsh would never get to be a soldier, would never get to serve the country she loved, would never get to prove that she belonged. But because of her death, because of her suffering, the system that had destroyed her was finally being rebuilt. "I'll make sure her story isn't forgotten," Maya promised. "I'll make sure every recruit who comes through training knows her name, knows what happened to her, knows why it can never happen again." Mrs. Walsh nodded, fresh tears falling down her cheeks. "That's all I wanted. That's all I ever wanted." 3 months later, Maya stood before a new class of SEAL candidates at Naval Amphibious Base Coronado. 147 young men and women who dreamed of becoming the most elite warriors on Earth. Some would succeed. Most would fail. But all of them would learn the same lessons Maya had learned from her father, from her training from the fires she'd walked through. Strength was about decisions. Courage was about choosing to act when staying silent was safer. And the measure of a warrior wasn't the body they inhabited, but the character they forged. "My name is Specialist Maya Chen," she said, her voice carrying across the assembled candidates. "They call me Ghost, and for the next 6 months I'm going to teach you what it means to be a SEAL." She paused, let her gaze sweep across the faces before her. Young, nervous, uncertain, just like she'd been 5 years ago. "Some of you are wondering if you belong here, if you're strong enough, fast enough, tough enough." She held up her right arm, showed them the dragon tattoo, the 3 tally marks beneath it. "I'm here to tell you that none of that matters. What matters is whether you're willing to get up every time you fall, whether you're willing to carry your teammates when they can't carry themselves, whether you're willing to sacrifice everything for people who might never know your name." Torres was in the crowd, her face determined, her stance ready. She'd passed the preliminary screening. Now came the real test. Maya caught her eye, nodded almost imperceptibly. "You will be broken here. That's the point. We break you down so we can build you back up stronger. But there's a difference between breaking someone to make them better and breaking someone to destroy them." Her voice hardened. "I've seen both. I've lived both. And I promise you this, as long as I'm standing, no one in this program will be destroyed. Not by instructors, not by the system, not by anyone." She stepped forward closer to the candidates, close enough to see the hope and fear warring in their eyes. Private Amanda Walsh believed she could serve her country. She was told she was wrong. She was told she was weak. She was broken by people who should have protected her. Maya's voice cracked, but she pushed through. "She's not here today. But I am. And I'm going to spend the rest of my career making sure that what happened to her never happens to anyone else." The candidates were silent, absorbing her words. Some looked skeptical, others looked inspired. All of them looked different than they had 5 minutes ago. Good. That was the point. Maya turned, began walking toward the obstacle course that would be their home for the next 24 weeks. Over her shoulder, she called out the words that would define their journey. "Welcome to Buds. Your war starts now." Behind her, 147 voices responded as one. And in Maya's pocket, Amanda Walsh's compass pointed true north, guiding her toward the future she'd been born to build. She had entered Fort Jackson as a ghost, invisible, underestimated, dismissed. She had emerged as something else entirely. A protector. A warrior. A symbol of everything the military could become, when courage replaced cruelty and justice replaced silence. The ghosts of the fallen walked with her now. Her father, David Brooks. Amanda Walsh. All the women who'd been broken before her, all the lives that had been lost to a system that valued tradition over truth. But Maya Chen was no longer haunted by ghosts. She had become one. And ghosts, she had learned, were impossible to kill. The compass pointed forward. The path was clear. And somewhere in the ranks of candidates before her, the next generation of warriors was taking its first steps toward becoming something extraordinary. They laughed when she fell. They stopped laughing when she stood back up. And they never forgot the lesson she taught them, that heroes came in all forms, that strength had no gender, and that the smallest among them might be the one who saved them all.